Hi. I am told I exist and I'm having a hard time of existing. I've tried to make this, I think, twice now, and I wasn't holding the microphone this last time. So, I'm reading Marguerite Porete, The Mirror of Simple Souls. So far I've read chapters 1 through 12, and I find it a difficult read, not because it is beyond me, though chapter 1 would have me believe it is beyond me on the premise of I'm using wisdom and reason, and those are too earthly, and I should not have done so, and I'm a faulty, disgusting human for being of the flesh. So, and I say disgusting because she used the word, said this life is refuse. And then chapters 2 through 12 run you through the fact that you need to process yourself through the 7 virtues in order to die to the flesh after that process. And there are 9 points to... I forget the word for it. I'll open the book and find it immediately pretty much. But 9 things that describe a life that has died to itself. And they read like they should be bad things, but apparently they're good things. The reason I find this a difficult read, however, so Marguerite Porete was a Beguinage nun in the time of 1100 AD, and she got burnt at the stake for writing this for heresy. Has to do something with how God works through her, and that is heresy. You know, God, according to the Catholic Church, shouldn't be able to work through you. You're too close to God at that point, I assume. So, instead, or rather that gives way to why it's a difficult read, I have understood through reading this, she reads in what modern psychology would understand, maybe would understand. I'm not a trained psychologist. To be an abuse victim. Like, she has multiple introductions. She didn't write this solely from her point of view. There are multiple authors, so love is one of them, and then love is divided into different types of love, like fine love was introduced this last chapter, as well as pure love and divine love, and purely love is also different from pure love. And love is not pure love in and of itself. Really roundabout. So all of those are different authors. The main authors I understood was the author themselves, love and the soul. So that would be what modern psychology would very obviously and immediately call DID or MPD. I think it's the retired DSM-5 that calls it multiple personality disorder, but dissociative identity disorder. And there will be other times she writes in a very cyclical pattern, and to me that's indicative of a narcissistic defense mechanism where you kind of cruelly confuse someone and then get round to answering something or relaying the bone of what you were attempting, and by that point the individual is so tired and confused with what it was you said or how it was you said it that even if you're right, or wrong, they can't answer back. It's a power move to control the situation and the conversation, and she does that a lot as well. And then she gets to this other point where she goes through addressing the virtues and how you're supposed to go through the virtues to die to the flesh. She calls it hellacious, having suffered the virtues. And that she evolved into an entirely different species by then calling herself a seraphim, which is a type of angel. So evasive tactics, avoidance, a means of avoiding whatever it is you're going through by relaying your understanding of reality as almost a metaphor for something else so that it gives you power in a situation you don't have power. It reads a lot like that. So today I will be attempting to read chapter 13 and 14 and maybe 15, but as she writes more, these chapters seem to get longer, and I do rant a good amount. I will do my best to understand what I am reading, but my best is not always good enough. C'est la vie, c'est la guerre. So chapter 13 is how reason is content with the explanation of the things said above for the contemplatives and the actives, but she asks again for the sake of the common folk. We are the common folk because we suck. Contemplatives and actives weren't necessarily spoken on in depth, so they were not properly introduced. I understand contemplatives to be anybody that is asking questions, though I think it's in a holy regard, and actives are those who are actively pursuing something, and I think that pursuance is of God's work, or at least understanding of what God is working on. So reason also, any of these characters that she has utilized to perform authorship through, they're all feminine, and I think that's more supporting evidence for DID on the premise of she has gendered them like herself. So when it says she asks again for the sake of common folk, it's reason asking because, reason is just commonly defecated on in this book because you're not supposed to use reason. Reason is of the flesh. Oh, right. That's another thing she does. She fights her ego in this a lot. And I think reason takes up a role of like specifically her Marguerite's flesh. And so she tries to take pride in herself while also trying to practice humility, and therein, in one breath, she might compliment herself and say she's the closest to God. And then in that same breath, say that, she's nothing and nearly shouldn't exist. So this starts off with reason talking. Now love says reason, you have condescended to our prayer, that is, to have declared the things said above for the actives and contemplatives. I pray again that you declare them for the sake of the common folk, of whom some will be able perchance to come to this stage, for there are several double words which are hard to grasp with their intellect. If you explain, this book will show to all the true light of truth, and truth is capitalized, so it is now a proper noun, and that is introduced now as a new character. And the perfection of charity. Charity is one of the virtues, but it is also capitalized, so it is an entity unto itself. And those who are preciously elected by God and called and supremely loved by Him. Love then says, reason says love, where are these double words which you pray me to distinguish and clarify for the profit of those for whose sake you make to us so humble a request, and also for the hearers of this book, which we will name the mirror of simple souls who remain in will and desire. Okay, so the part who remain in will and desire was not added to the title. Don't know what happened there. Reason responds, "To this we respond to you, lady love," says Reason, "that this book says greatly admiring things about this soul, that is, in the 7th chapter, that this soul takes no account of shame, nor of honor, nor of poverty, nor of wealth, not of ease, nor of anxiety, not of love, nor of hate, not of hell, nor of paradise. And with this it says that this soul possesses all and possesses nothing. She knows all and knows nothing. She wills all and wills nothing. As it says above in the 9th chapter, and so the soul, says Reason, neither desires nor despises poverty, neither martyrdom nor tribulations." Is not martyrdom tribulations? If these words are not commonly used, which I don't know why they would be outside of religion. Sorry, more tribulations than martyrdom. Tribulations is often paired with contextually trials. And so as I understand it, though I've never really directly looked up the word, contextually I understand it to mean difficulties. Tribulations are times in which test you. So to be a martyr, you have to go through tribulations. A martyr is just someone who suffers. Sorry. Righteously suffers, and in order to be righteous suffering, the suffering has to thereafter make them a better person for them having suffered, and they're better because in their suffering someone has gained from it. Which, now that I say it, sounds parasitic. But I guess it's holy parasites. So I am at tribulations, but I cannot find the word. Neither martyrdom nor tribulations, neither masses nor sermons, not fasts nor prayers, and who gives to nature all she asks of her without remorse of conscience. And without fail, love, says Reason, this no one can grasp with my intellect if he is not taught it by you through your teaching. For my intellect and my judgment, and the judgment is Reason's intellect and Reason's judgment, and all my counsel is the best that I know how to counsel, that one desire contempt, poverty, and all manner of tribulations, and masses, and sermons, and fasts, and prayers, that one have fear of all kinds of love, whatever they might be, for the perils which can be there, and that one desire above all paradise. I'm sorry, I'm going to address real quick. There she says, so Reason again is born of the flesh. And this is something that, under the tutelage of priests, she would have been told to get rid of. Get rid of your worldly desires, they're holding you back. And so it is Reason that is speaking. And therein all that Reason is saying is going to be wrong. So Reason says one should desire contempt, and they should desire poverty, and all manner of tribulations. And then masses and sermons is apparently synonymous with these things that are bad, contempt and poverty and tribulations. And then fasts and prayers as well is grouped in with that. And then right after that, it's followed with fear of all kinds of love. And again, this is coming from Reason, which is born from earthly understanding. And as I understand it, this is her trying to survive. And I think what I just read is indicative of her feeling the need to survive these holy tutelage, the teachings, as sermons and fasts and prayers are something that she finds to be taxing, either emotionally or physically or psychologically or all three or any one of the combinations. And it's kind of sad that Reason, earthly Reason, would fear love. So she was at some point told by a higher up in the religious context that she needs to not fear love, that it is holier to not be afraid of love. So either before she got to the convent or while she was at the convent, she had been abused and started to be afraid of love. And someone tried to redirect her by saying, well, that's not of God. And I don't know how to put this into words. And I know that the words that I would use immediately would definitely be offensive. I will try to be delicate. If you are an abuse victim and the thing that you suffer from is a lack of understanding of love, and someone thereafter shames you and says, well, your inability to understand it, your inability to appreciate it, makes you less than others. It is not what is perfect. Your survival has been built on needing to not understand love, because the tool set you've been provided is avoid this, and if I avoid this, the bad things won't happen. And then right afterwards, you're told what is perfect wants you to not avoid the thing that you have learned has made the bad things happen. You can't fix someone immediately. It's healing a wound. That doesn't happen overnight. It'd be like seeing, the blood coagulate and then trying to stitch it together while the wound is trying to heal itself naturally. I feel like you could do more harm than good in that situation. So whether she was abused by the priesthood or she was abused before she got to the convent, I don't think that she healed in a manner that was conducive to mental health. And I think it very well could have forced her to spiral. I keep saying spiral in these series, and I don't mean to, be giving reference to anything. I just don't have a better word for it. Losing yourself, essentially. So getting back into it, that one have fear of all kinds of love, whatever they might be, for the perils which can be there, and that one desire above all paradise, and that one have fear of hell, that one refuse all manner of honors and temporal things, and all comforts, in obstructing nature in what she asks, except those things without which the soul could not live, as in the exemplar of the suffering and passion of our Lord Jesus Christ. This is the best, says reason, that I know how to say and counsel all those who live in my obedience. Thus I say to all, that none will grasp this book with my intellect unless they grasp it by the virtue of faith, and by the power of love, who are my mistresses, because I obey them in all things. And moreover I wish to say, says reason, that whoever has these two strings in his bow, that is, the light of faith and the power of love, has permission to do all that pleases him, by the witness of love herself, who says to the soul, my love, love, and do what you will. So, to reiterate for the umpteenth time, I was brought up non-denominational, not Catholic. So I have a very limited understanding of Catholicism, but in that limited understanding of Catholicism, I do recognize that there are some peoples, maybe not everyone, but some peoples that go about it far more casually than those who are taught non-denomination go about believing in God. And so this could be very well addressing the people that are like, well, I'm going to go sin and then I'll come back to church and just say 10 Hail Marys when I go to the confessional. And it'll be okay because through Mary intermediating for me, I'll be back to grand. And I think God created me with the understanding that I would fail, so it's fine to fail. And through the light of faith and the power of love, has permission to do all that pleases him. It gives me the understanding that that's what that means. Like, I'm going to go fuck around, and I don't have to find out because God created a blood sacrifice that would take on every single sin ever created. So if I address God's mom's gonna perform the blood sacrifice all over again. I'm not sure the magic behind that, but there's someone found logic in it. When I reference the blood magic, Jesus was sacrificed on a medieval torture device, and Christianity just calls it the cross, but I don't think most people respect or understand the fact that there were many crosses. It's a medieval torture device, so when you're hanging it on your wall, you may as well just be hanging any other torture device on your wall. And he was like poked to death, essentially. The way in which someone is hanged on a cross is specific to slowly draining the blood when you make incisions. And they would make incisions in the body in places that would be painful. I mean, getting cut is painful, but that you wouldn't immediately die. So the idea was that you would suffer on the cross, this medieval torture device, for at least a day or two, if not longer. And sometimes like salty sea salt water would be put into the wounds to make it not necessarily cauterize it, but sting more. It was a torture device. And so God bled out, and biblically the metaphor is that not God bled out, Jesus bled out. The metaphor is that Jesus then covered the earth in his blood. And that is a blood sacrifice. That is exactly what that is. And through Jesus' blood, everybody is saved. That is exactly what is said. Another metaphor commonly used is sacrificing a sheep. And so I don't remember when the Passover was. It was Moses' time. They made a blood sacrifice and put the blood above their doors so that God would pass over their houses and not kill their firstborn. That was another metaphor for what people believe to have eventually become Jesus, that Jesus was the sacrificed lamb. And again, paying homage to the time in which Jesus was sacrificed, that is a blood sacrifice. That is just grandiose magic when it becomes human. It's larger than a sheep being sacrificed. That doesn't make it any less a blood sacrifice. So when you have a medieval torture device with a blood sacrifice hanging on it in your home, that's all it is. And you don't look any different from someone practicing Santeria. You just feel holier than them. Love responds, reason, says love, you are very wise and very certain about what is fitting for you. And you wish to have response to the words said above, and because you have prayed me that I state the meaning, I will respond to all your questions. I guarantee you, reason, says love, that such souls whom fine love governs possess as equally dear shame as honor, and honor as shame. Poverty as wealth, and wealth as poverty, torment from God and his creatures, as comfort from God and his creatures. So when addressing Catholicism, there are different branches of Catholicism. One of those is a belief held, or has a belief held, that pain brings you closer to the blood sacrifice that I just mentioned. And if you feel pain, then you have the ability to sympathize with what Jesus went through while dying on the cross. And in you learning sympathy through being dealt pain, especially if it does come to you by the hands of someone who is holy, like a priest, then you become a martyr. And a martyr is a holy thing. It is good for you. So I think that's what, it's mentioning when torment from God and his creatures as comfort from God and his creatures. I personally do not adhere to that. And if you do, cool. I don't think children should be brought up like that. Things have effects psychologically beyond just the surface. I just personally don't agree with it. And it's a touchy subject because it's a practice within a religion. And I mean, I've been shitting on religion, but that's shitting on religion, not the practice. And I personally believe that meditative practices are perfect. I think people should have meditative practices as a means of, being able to further understand themselves and past just simply understanding, providing a pattern that they can hold to so as to create brevity, especially in these times of the technology we've gotten to where everything is everywhere all the time. Patterns and meditative practices create these brevity. And if you follow something like a pattern every day, I think it can help your mental health recognize patterns elsewhere. So I'll shit on religion, but I don't like shitting on, the practices of religion. And that's why I say, tricky when I start shitting on people believing that torment brings you closer to God. If anything, where I am coming from, if anybody gives a shit to find out, I think torment would bring you closer to yourself. I want to say it's Camus, a philosopher that exists that says you don't find out, the true identity of a man until, I cannot directly quote, until pain essentially strips him bare of all the personages he created for himself. I don't think that's true either. I think the only person who would ever find out who they are from pain is the individual suffering the pain. But it is human nature to survive. And if you are going through something that strips you of your person, you'll create something to survive that. That is what I believe to be human nature. So I don't agree with the practice of pain bringing you closer to God. I think it just brings you closer to yourself. And what makes it holy, there are people that go hang themselves from shark hooks because that's how they interpret pleasure. Are they now saints? Why not, by this rhetoric, all submissives are saintly. Therein I don't agree, So this just goes over, the contrasts. Here's one example and here's the opposite of the example. And it just makes a list of that because why not? And truth knows this well, that they neither will nor not will anything of these prosperities nor of these adversities, for such souls no longer possess any will except what God wills in them. And the divine will does not occupy these lofty creatures with such encumbrances as we have described. And the encumbrances mentioned is perception. To perceive is to be encumbered with existence. So I guess this would mean that the perfect person to whomever wrote this book would be someone who is lobotomized. Again, I do not support this rhetoric. I think it's incredibly unhealthy. I think this book is a difficult read because it is very unhealthy. So love is talking now again. I have already said above, says love, that such souls possess as equally dear all adversities of heart, for the body and for the soul, as prosperity, and prosperity as adversity. And it is true, says love, if the adversities and prosperities come to them, their will would not be the cause of it. And also these souls know not what is best for them, nor in what manner God wishes to find their salvation. Or the salvation of their neighbors, nor by what means God wishes to dispense justice or mercy, nor through what means God wishes to give to the soul the supreme gift of the goodness of his divine nobility. And for this, the unencumbered soul possesses no longer any will to will or not will, except only to will the will of God, and to accept in peace the divine ordinance. And there again is just cyclical speech pattern with repetition of one word as to overwhelm and control the narrative. A lot of this is a defense mechanism. There are multiple chapters that are just defending the initial take, and I think I've said this once and I'll say it again. She introduced that there are seven virtues that one ought to proceed to go through in order to be a saved soul, in order to be able to die to the flesh. She has only been able to mention one virtue. And after that, there have been multiple chapters now just defending the stance that she has in fact died to the flesh. She is merely defending herself, not defending the notion or the idea, or even providing evidence that the idea exists and in what form. So then reason speaks. Still, lady love, I add one thing to my question. That is that this book says that this soul possesses all things, and so possesses nothing. You give reference to Da Vinci. You cannot have nothing and have something, but you cannot have everything without having nothing. Love, this is true, says love, for the soul possesses God by divine grace, and whoever possesses God possesses all things. And so the book says she possesses nothing, for all that this soul possesses from God within her by the gift of divine grace seems to be nothing to her. That's just supporting evidence for this person, the author, believing that a lobotomized person is the best person. Again, I do not support this theory. Fucking dangerous. And thus it is nothing compared to what she loves, which is in him, which he will not give to anyone except himself. And according to this intellect, this soul possesses all, and so possesses nothing. She knows all, and so knows nothing. Poorly supported argument. Repetition of what was said rather than definition of what was said. Chapter 14. How this soul by faith has understanding of God. I am not entirely sure the relevance at this point, other than to say it's just perpetuating the defense. And I'm wondering when she's going to stop defending herself. So love is the speaker. She knows, says love, by the virtue of faith, that God is all power and all wisdom and perfect goodness, and that God the Father has accomplished the work of the incarnation. The incarnation was just introduced, and I'm wondering if she is giving reference to the fact that she has become God's avatar, instead of, being God's creation anymore. And the Son also, and the Holy Spirit also. Thus God the Father has joined human nature to the person of God the Son, and the person of God the Son has joined human nature to the person of himself. That's just giving reference to when Jesus rose to heaven. Jesus joined the Godhead. I'm losing my voice apparently. If it changed pitch suddenly to be more gravelly, I can feel it. That's why I'm commenting on it. Can't do anything about it. So yeah, Jesus ascended to heaven and joined the Godhead, the Trinity, and that is what is referenced when it says God the Son. God the Father is indicative of the only God, Old Testament God. And the separation of the two is meant to insinuate that God the Son is born of having experienced Earth, an avatar on Earth. And that is the reference of God the Son is joined with human nature, was Jesus. Actually, rant, now that I mention it, there is a passage, and I'm not quoting it, or a verse that says Jesus is addressing whomever the fuck, whether it be the apostles or not, but Jesus is addressing someone and he tells them, no, don't be like me. I am human, like you. Instead, be like God. Aim to be like God, as God is perfect. And it is understood in Christian religion, followers of Christ, that Christ was emblematic of the most perfect human one could be. And so the thought of dying to the flesh, I believe, is equated to Jesus dying on the cross and sacrificing. And so sympathetically, you are supposed to not be human. And I think it has become convoluted between Jesus saying, be like God, do not be like me, I am human like you, with dying on the cross, where to simplify it would be, aim for perfection. It may not be attainable. You're probably definitely never going to become God, but that doesn't mean you should stop trying to aim for perfection. You should always be working on yourself, and you should always be wanting to get better at whatever the fuck you're doing. Don't settle is essentially what that says. But of course, any religion is going to teach you that the metaphysics of it is more important than something that is actually ascertainable. The carrot in front of the donkey, work harder, because if you're working harder towards a religious ideation, then you're always perpetually working. And where religion is concerned, it normally means economy, tithing and whatnot. So, and God the Holy Spirit has joined human nature, so joined the ghost that Jesus left when Jesus was sacrificed, joined Jesus to the person of God the Son of Jesus. Joined human nature. The ghost of Jesus joined human nature to Jesus. What? There's a trope in comics, and it's something like use the atomizing ray, where you can literally say this, but it ends up being applicable to anything in existence, like how a lot of people refer to dark matter. because it's a limited understanding where science is concerned, it's still being studied. You can say fucking anything you want about it, really, especially if you're talking to people who aren't necessarily interested in the field. And this is what that feels like. It's just, most people aren't going to have knowledge on Christianity, especially 1100 AD. So a lot of people would hear this and go, that's got to be profound, but literally doesn't make a lick of fucking sense. I guess God exists outside of time. But how does the ghost have the ability to do anything when the ghost was what was left on Earth for humanity to connect with God? So the ghost did not join the Trinity. The ghost did not join God. It does not exist outside of time. So the ghost exists after Jesus died, but somehow the ghost was able to apply human nature to Jesus, but Jesus existed in human nature its whole life. Otherwise, it would not be considered Jesus. It would just be considered God as it rejoined God. And therein has lost the individualized identity of Jesus. Jesus doesn't exist once it is rejoined God. It is just God. So this chronologically doesn't make sense. And if there is logic to be applied, I'm not sure how one could, given it is a sentiment of spirituality or metaphysics. And like I just mentioned, science is doing its best to understand metaphysics currently. So trying to therein use metaphysics to define God and spirituality would be the most one could do to understand what the fuck was just said. But right now, not a lick of fucking sense. But then again, the fallback is always, I'm too earthly to understand. I'm using earthly reason and wisdom. And therein, because I am operating in the flesh, I'm just not holy enough. There's a perfect metaphor for this. The emperor's new clothes. The emperor is visited by two merchants. And these merchants are spoken well of throughout the kingdom. But the day before they visit the king, they're like, oh, we've run out of product. What do we do? We're so far away from base. And one of them's like, snake oil. Why don't we just do this? So the next day they go to the emperor and they walk up to the emperor full of pomp and they hold out their arms. And the emperor goes, what are you doing? And they go, this is the most beautiful cloth in all of the land. Nay, in all of the world. This is gorgeous. Do you not see this weave? They say only the smartest people, only essentially those blessed by God can see this. Do you not see it, emperor? So the emperor is put into a position, does he admit that he cannot see it and therein say that he is stupid to the entire court, to these merchants that are well spoken of, that have reputation? Or does he take the cloth and play into it? So to save public image, he takes the cloth and his advisors follow suit because he is the leader. And they say, oh, that is beautiful, because they don't want to admit to being too stupid. So the entire court is now saying they can see it. And everybody doesn't want to be stupid. So they see it. So they go through the whole process of dressing him in this cloth. They're acting like they all can see it. So they're grabbing at the air and they're pulling at the air as though they are dressing him in robes. And he goes and walks in town and poverty, the common folk. They say, what the fuck is he doing? He's naked as shit. And of course the courtesians are like, oh, they're too stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. This is beautiful cloth. Obviously you can tell the stupid. See, they can't see it. Religion. Holy Spirit. I think I skipped something. Boopy doop doop boop boo. So then God possesses in him one soul nature that is divine. How can anyone speak on God? Excuse the ever-living fuck out of me. Who the fuck can say that God possesses one soul nature? That's presumptuous. You've already admitted in this book, this book is already admitted to God being infinite, omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. But suddenly, one soul nature is what God possesses? Are you okay? That doesn't sound infinite at all. That sounds pretty fucking finite. And that is divine nature. And the person of the Son possesses in him 3 natures. What? That does, I guess, rant time again. If God is infinite, this does say that the only nature that God would hold within God is divine nature, divinity. But if God is infinite, then God holds within itself more than just divinity. Due to infinite existing, So, is God divine? Or is what is divine godly? Not the other way around. And if you admit to the second, that divinity is godly, and what is godly is not divine, then I think you would have to admit, obviously it would stand to reason because we're working on the premise that God is infinite, that what is not divine is also godly. So we're back to Jesus possesses 3 natures. There's a lot of natures. That is the same nature which the Father possesses, divinity, and the nature of the soul and the nature of the body. Wow, they just limited God. So apparently God, the infinite source, doesn't have the soul or the body, but Jesus does. But how does Jesus even exist if Jesus rejoined the Godhead? Logically, that doesn't make sense. If Jesus rejoined the Godhead, Jesus doesn't exist, only God does. To believe this, to say this, to think this is true contemplation, that's a whole sentence. That's not a sentence. That doesn't make sense. What? To believe this, to say this, to think this is true contemplation. There's no subject. What? I guess subject would be this, but what is this? What the fuck? I hate that so much. Okay, this is one power, one wisdom, and one will. Is that the definition for what this is? Talk about fucking confusing, man. But I guess I'm fucking human. I'm of the flesh. How could I understand? What? This is one power, one wisdom, and one will. How can it be one if it is all? That is so limiting of something that is supposed to be infinite. One God alone in 3 persons. No. That's not the logic there. It's supposed to be 3 persons in one God. not one God in three persons. And there is a difference. If you believe in the Trinity, it would be three in one. Not one in three. Because to have one in three, to have God in all three of these, would limit the effect of God while boosting the effect of these three. But to have these three in God would limit the effect of the three, but boost the effect of the one God. The phrasing matters. And if God is all-powerful, and if God is infinite, then these three sit on a lower hierarchical standing to that infinite, all-powerful entity. And therein, it would not be God that is in them, but them that is in God. This God is everywhere. How can you say that? What the fuck? Crossing the logic again. So it's like, oh, if you're going to argue me, I'll just reiterate that God is infinite. So I agree with you, so we agree, so you can't have an argument. This is bullshit. In his divine nature, but humanity is glorified in paradise. That's not relevant. What? Joined to the person of the Son as well as to the sacrament of the altar. So the sacrament of the altar, this is Catholicism. I believe the sacrament of the altar might be, eat of my blood or drink of my blood and eat of my flesh. Talk about zombies. And I do think that it is in reverence to the human sacrifice, the blood sacrifice. And I'm wondering if this saying that humanity is joined to the person of the Son, which is Jesus, humanity is joined to Jesus as well as to the sacrament of the altar, is somehow reverse unoing, Jesus's sacrifice. It's not Jesus who took on all the sins, but now by you participating, you are taking the sins back and suffering in Jesus' stead. I think I could be wrong about sacrament of the altar because there's an altar mentioned as well biblically, which is that History Channel. They theorized that it was radioactive material in the altar. And I don't remember the name of it right now. But it was the altar that was placed in the holiest of the holies. And this tent, the holiest of the holies, this tent, if you look it up biblically, had 3 sections. And okay, so the reason that I'm bent on this story, and I think this is the last chapter I'm going to read. I went to a Baptist church, and I didn't know it was Baptist because it ran itself like it was non-denominational. And I think it is pretty popular among Baptist church now or Baptist religion now to say what happens to you is devised by God, and I'm not disagreeing with that, but what happens to you being devised by God is therein how much God likes or dislikes you, and I don't agree with that at all, because if God is infinite, you are a part of God, so then it would be God disliking itself. And I don't think an all-perfect entity that is everything can stand to dislike itself. And that is where you get, the whole doesn't feel anything. Because it feels everything. But I think that's only for God. I don't think that's for the parts of God. So anyways, I went to this Baptist church. And in the sermon, I will say that this Baptist church was in Tennessee. So it could have definitely been racistly fueled. The sermon said that once the slaves had been released from Egypt, that they were so ungrateful they never visited the holiest of the holies to give thanks. And, you can't get up in the middle of service and be like, fuck you, dude. You don't know what you're saying. But right now, fuck you, dude. You don't know what you're saying. So the holiest of the holies was a tent set up in the desert, I guess. And it had 3 sections. And so the first section, you would go in. I think anyone could go in. Common access. And then the second section, you had to go through being bathed in specific water, and you had to go through fasting and prayer. And it differentiated from the third section where the Ark of the Covenant, it was the Ark of the Covenant, maybe it was, I don't know, was held. It differentiated by the number of times you had to do these bathing yourself and praying and fasting, the amount you had to do these. And so if you went into the second section, people would tie a rope around your ankle and a bell was attached to it, because if you went into the third section, it was apparently common that people dropped dead. And no one could go in because they hadn't done all of these practices of bathing themselves and whatnot. They would just drag them by the rope out of the holiest of the holies. And so it was also common knowledge that, not just anyone would be able to approach this ark. So for this Baptist pastor, whatever the fuck they're called, preacher, to sit there and say they were ungrateful because they never visited, I feel almost personally attacked. Did you read the Bible? Did you read the Bible? Did you even take into consideration contextual evidence and the fact that this is of this year, and of these practices? It's infuriating. It's infuriating. So that is the end of chapter 14. That mentioned the sacrament of the altar, which is not the Ark of the Covenant. What I'm talking about is the Ark of the Covenant, and I may have definitively mixed up the two. I very much think I was initially right in assuming it was, drink of my blood, eat of my flesh. That's the sacrament of the altar. I'd have to look it up. I might do it. I might not. I probably won't. But you can if you want. So yeah, goodbye. Have a good night. Learn to love yourself and question everything.